A Manxman's Yarns. 3 short stories written and spoken by me, Drew Herdman. This, the second story, is called Yellow Peril. A tale to capture the imagination. A tale of horror on a wet and windy Halloween evening. The rain lashed down in great sweeping arcs as the wind swirled the sodden leaves into heaps, which glistened wetly as the moon shone fitfully between scurrying clouds. The evening of the 31st of October 1999 was a bitch. Not really like Halloween, I thought miserably. Autumn had come early, and the first chill morning air had started the death of the flowers that had glowed all summer long. As I stood in the bus shelter, my mind went back over the last few days. I was a reporter on the Clarion, a paper of some repute for digging into dark places. I had been investigating the growing group of people who had gone missing, people who had no apparent reason for vanishing that could be determined, people with solid lives, people who had no financial, job or marriage worries. The police had been called in, but after exhaustive inquiries had drawn a complete blank in each case. The details had been put on file and forgotten as more pressing work claimed their full attention. It had been very anxious relatives that had finally interested the Clarion in further investigation, and I had drawn the short straw. The files of 8 people had landed on my desk, and I had become very familiar with their histories and faces, as a photograph of each one had been included. The only solid fact I had been able to unearth had been that they had in each case left their houses for a variety of reasons to catch a bus, and had not returned. The bus seemed to be the common factor, but even photos displayed in the various bus line offices and canteens had not been able to jog any driver's memories. In our area, the small yellow bus had predominance, and they were everywhere, scurrying around like a disturbed anthill. True, they did sterling service and were very popular, as the city was now rapidly approaching gridlock, and the private car was becoming impossible to drive on the roads, let alone park. As one of nature's determined drivers, it had been arranged to part with my car due to a failed wheel bearing, and I had left it in the local garage for repair and caught the bus into town. The day had dragged, but now I was homeward bound. Well, I hoped so. It was not until 9 that evening that I had been able to get away from the office, as I had had to file a story for the next day's paper. Now I stood and thought dark thoughts as the rain, blowing into the open vandalised bus stop, gradually soaked the legs of my trousers and then leaked out of the tops of my shoes. I was dragged out of my reverie by the glare of approaching lights. I shielded my eyes against the reflections coming off the wet road and dimly made out the shape of a bus. It was one of the many small yellow buses that seemed to be everywhere but go nowhere. It slowed and then stopped with its front wheel in a large pool of water right by my feet. The surge of water mounted the pavement and washed coldly over my sodden shoes. The windows were all steamed up, and I could only make out the dim shapes of the passengers. With a sigh, the door folded back on itself, and a breath of warm air enveloped me as I squelched up the step. The driver glanced at me, one eyebrow raised. This movement saved him the trouble of talking, and I merely muttered the amount of the fare and put the coins on the shelf in front of me. The driver said not a word, but stared out of the windscreen, and as the door hissed shut he accelerated away. The jolt as we moved off pushed me down the bus, and I nearly fell onto the lap of a tall, angular lady. It was the fact that she did not even acknowledge my apology that made me glance at her face. It was immobile, not a flicker of either anger at my clumsiness or sorrow at my poor attempt at keeping my dripping self from wetting her thoroughly, and that made me look around at the other passengers. They were all the same, sitting there like assorted dummies that had been put into position and left. There were 8 of them. As I gazed at them, my brain started comparing them to the photos I had in my desk, and one by one, each face matched a photo. White faces stared at nothing, bodies swayed in unison with the lurch of the bus as it cornered, throwing up sheets of spray from the rivers of rain that coursed over the drain gullies that were blocked solid with rotting leaves. It was at this point that I realised that this bus was not really the one I wanted to be on. The larger brother to this bus, the ones that run on carefully organised routes, have both stops for passengers to get on and off, and push-button bells to warn the driver that he should stop at the next bus stop. There were no push-buttons. I tried to get up, but felt an overpowering desire to go to sleep. The bus was warm and dry, and the rain splattered on the windows and ran off in torrents. How nice to just sit here and wait. Wait for what? A small voice asked in my rapidly dulling mind. Then I remembered the other passengers. I must stop the bus. I staggered to my feet and willed myself to walk to the driver. He must have sensed me coming, because he turned to face me, and never have I seen such a face filled with such malevolence. He raised a hand and pointed first in my direction, and then towards the seat which was directly behind him. It was as though another person was in my body, making my legs move, and I saw that I was indeed stepping towards the indicated seat. Now I felt the mood had changed. I no longer felt sleepy, but more alive and aware of all that was around me than I had felt for some